Setting up. Let's see. Okay. All right. I think we are live. So everyone needs to bear with me because Facebook changed its interface tonight. It's probably been there a while already, this new interface, but I'm just checking to make sure that we are on, and we are. Okay, it's always a party when you come to Top Shelf Live at Merrick Library. So welcome to episode 7. I can't believe it's episode 7. I want to thank everybody who has returned, who has come back to join us for this episode. I am thrilled to have you. Welcome to all our Merrick patrons, near and far. We love seeing you in the building. I hope you guys are staying safe and healthy, and you guys are our biggest supporters, and I can't thank you enough for all of that support through all of this. You've been stellar, and that's from me and the staff. And all of the guests who are new, who haven't been here before, welcome to Top Shelf at Merrick Library, Top Shelf Live. I am your host, Carolyn Tack. It's a wonderful thing to be here. I'm especially happy because today, this week is Earth Week. Tomorrow is Earth Day, and I can't think of a better way to celebrate that event than with our guest author tonight, author Julie Carrick Dalton, with her debut novel, Waiting for the Night Song. Julie, I know you were on episode 52 of Top Shelf podcast. I am just so glad that you're back with me, and I can share my love of you with everybody else who's watching.
Well, thank you for having me back. I am so excited to be here, and especially right now, Earth Week. As I am excited to talk about climate and fiction and where they intersect, and to see you again. I love talking to you.
Yeah, we had quite a time on the podcast, which right now, ladies and gentlemen, these episodes are all on Spotify, which is a brand new thing. So you can't go wrong with Spotify. So I hope you will catch up with episode 52 there. And I am just looking to make sure that I can see us. Yes. Okay. I can see any comments that are coming in. So tonight, Waiting for the Night Song. And I know that this is a debut, but I have been living with this book for so long, not as long as Julie has been living with the book, but I loved it so much. As usual, I can't keep the book in. It's out everywhere. So you get this lovely cover art, and you can see it in Julie's background. Julie, would you mind? Oh, actually, what I want to do is before I let Julie give a discussion of the book, I just want to read this review from Kim Michelle Richardson. She is the best-selling author of The Book Woman of Troublesome Creek. She calls Waiting for the Night Song smart and searingly passionate, an illuminating snapshot of nature, betrayal, and sacrifices set in the evocative New Hampshire wilderness. That review says it all, and I can't wait for readers to listen to it on audio or read it from the library or get it from your local independent bookstore. Julie, would you please tell everybody what the book is about?
Oh, thank you for that great setup. So Waiting for the Night Song is my debut novel, and at its heart, it's really a story about a fierce female friendship. It's about secrets and betrayal and redemption, and maybe there's a body buried somewhere. You'll have to read to find out. But it's set against the backdrop of a slowly changing climate in this small agricultural town in New Hampshire. And that's, for me, is really meaningful because in addition to being a novelist, I own and operate a small farm in New Hampshire. So the setting of the book is the backdrop of my life in the farm in New Hampshire, in the woods, in the mountains, in the lake, and they're the places that are really special to me. So I was drawing on that inspiration for the climate themes and the agriculture themes in the story. And the story is about a woman named Katie Kessler. She is an entomologist. She's studying a beetle. It's told in 2 storylines. She's an 11-year-old girl in one part of the book, and she is in her late 30s in the present storyline. So when Katie's a young girl, she and her best friend Daniela are just having this idyllic, fun summer, and they witness a traumatic crime. And they choose to cover it up for reasons that make sense to an 11-year-old. But this decision will haunt them for the rest of their life. Now, in the adult timeline, Katie is an entomologist working for the forestry department, trying to prove that an invasive beetle has shown up in New Hampshire, but nobody believes her. this beetle, she is convinced, is killing off pine trees in the forest, setting the stage for a catastrophic forest fire during a drought. And it's a real beetle in real life. This is the beetle that's done a lot of damage in California and Colorado. We've seen all these catastrophic fires. It is not in New Hampshire. I used a little bit of fictional magic and brought the beetle to New Hampshire. So Katie's trying to,
it's fictional, right?
yes, we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So in the story, she's cut off from the research because there's the government in my story has cut federal lands off for environmental research. And there's a little truth behind that. We can talk about that later if you want, where that idea came from. But so she's trying to prove the beetle is there, and she faces this really tough decision of violating the law to trespass on federal land to prove the beetle's there and potentially head off a forest fire, or play by the rules, knowing that maybe there's going to be a fire she could have stopped. So either way, she's in a tough spot. But to make it even worse, in the very beginning, she gets a text from this old friend, Daniela, telling her she needs to come home because this traumatic event from their childhood has literally been unearthed. And so now she's facing the biggest mistake, terror from her childhood at the exact moment she needs to decide whether she's going to risk getting arrested, losing her career to go in, or is she going to let a forest fire come by playing by the rules? So I threw a lot at her in the very beginning of the book. And it's a suspense story. It's a story about friendship and childhood and nature and a lot of my love for the forest in New Hampshire.
And what I love is that slow reveal. So while there's this very incredible and important trend of climate fiction that's out there, what you do so brilliantly with Waiting for the Night Song is you wrap that all around with this murder mystery. And I didn't see it coming. I mean, you kind of get an idea that something has happened. And it was so compelling. And I remember the minute I finished it, probably not even the minute, probably I want to say 3/4 of the way through, I thought, all right, I got to find Julie Carrick Dalton. I got to get my pen. I got to figure out how I can get her on the podcast. And you said yes. And honestly, I couldn't sleep the night before, but that's just me, being as I normally get when I get that excited about a book. The mystery, the way this whole thing unfolds and the way you do it, it seems effortless to the reader. I know as a writer, you're just pulling your hair out. But what I would love for you to do is if you could read that opening paragraph, because that's the thing that just pulled me right in. And I remember thinking, oh man, I'm in some trouble here. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing that, if you can, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So this is the very first paragraph of chapter 1. Truth hides in fissures and hollows, in broken places and empty parts. It can be buried, crushed, or burnt, but the truth will always rise. The specific truth Katie Kessler stalked came in the form of the mountain pine bark beetle. She pried a strip of bark off a dying pine tree. Her fingers, blistered and raw from hunting the elusive creature, froze as a gush of insects writhed against the exposed wood. They scattered for cover, but not fast enough. So that's where we meet Katie in the woods with tracking an insect, a tiny, tiny insect that's potentially going to cause a disaster.
And you mentioned truth coming on, sort of becoming unburied, and the reader, I actually just got the chills, but the reader, when I read that, I thought, well, what are we going to do here? There are so many incredible themes in this book, right? There's so many elements. Like I said, there's the murder mystery, but there's family. I love the relationships between the two girlfriends. I think that relationship it's really, makes me miss my sister. It makes me think of all of the people that, friends that I have that we can't see during COVID, or even if you pick up the phone, it almost just doesn't do exactly the thing you want it to do. But I love that relationship between the sisters. There's also immigration. We said climate change. Tell me, I know when we talked about this on the podcast, I was very surprised because, of course, as I said, this is a debut novel, but for you, you've been writing it for much longer than the reader gets a chance to sit with it. How long did it take you, if you don't mind telling that story, because it's a great story?
I think it took approximately forever to write this book. I spent 13 years working on this story. It was a long-term commitment. And, people have asked me a lot if at some point did I want to give up, and it was never an option. I always knew I was going to finish this book. I didn't know if it would get published, but I always knew I would finish it. But one of the reason, people ask, why did it take so long to write a book? But I think the question should be, how did you write that book so fast in only 13 years? Because I was also raising 4 kids. When I started this book, I had one in preschool, one in elementary school, one in middle school, and one in high school, all at the same time when I started this book. So I was raising kids, and it was also the same time that I built my farm. The farm was a piece of just this 102 acres of forest near our family home, and it was being timbered and developed, and it was going to turn into a neighborhood or a strip mall, I don't know what. And I couldn't stand it that all these animals and bear and moose were going to be evicted from this forest.
Yeah, right.
And I have no business being a farmer. I don't know anything about farming. I'm learning, but so we bought the forest because there's enough land that at 5 acres that had already been cleared to build a farm on.
Oh.
But the rest of it, we preserved the forest, and there at least 92 acres of it, I think, has been preserved. And we actually operate it like a state park, and that we own it, but the state maintains the trails in the woods, and we allow anybody to come walk the trails, ride their bike, ride horses. So the story of the book is very tied up with my parenting of young children and building a farm. They're all one story to me. My children show up in this book in various ways. My farm is very present in the story. And I would say that also the book influenced my family life and my farm in some way. Some of the research I did on my farm had played out in things decisions I made while I was building my farm. So it was a long journey, but there was a lot going on and a lot of pieces that were that fit together to make this book happen. And the kids survived. The kids are doing great, and the farm's still there. So it all worked out okay.
When you get that little seed that wants to become this giant oak tree, which is waiting for the night song, what's the first thing that comes to you? Is it something that you're sort of washing the dishes and you get this idea? Are you hiking in the woods and you get this idea? What was the first thing that sort of, when the muse spoke to you, what came to you?
Yeah, it's very easy to answer. It was an image of little girls in a rowboat picking blueberries. And that image was where everything started out. It started as a really sweet story. It was not a murder mystery in the beginning. There was no murder. But the way this story evolved, it's actually kind of funny, so I would take my kids out in a boat, and we would pick blueberries on these wide open pieces of land on this lake in New Hampshire. There were no houses around. It was just these beautiful stretches of waterfront land loaded down with blueberries. So we would go pick blueberries, and at some point my kids started asking me, whose blueberries are these? Whose land is this? Are we stealing the blueberries? And I'm like,
Oh.
like nobody's going to care if some kids are stealing a couple handfuls of blueberries, but they kept, but whose are they? And do we need to ask permission? So then I started making up these rules to my kids about why it was okay that we were taking these blueberries. And I honestly do not think anybody cared that my children were taking a few handfuls of blueberries. I also do not think it's good parenting to make up rules to justify behavior that is kind of questionable. So I had made up these rules, things like if we don't take them all, it's fine. If you don't take all the blueberries from one bush, it's fine. If we don't get out of the boat, we're not trespassing. And then there's a bird's nest in that one, so we won't pick berries in that bush. And I started all of a sudden realizing this is bad parenting, that I'm just making up rules set up. So I backtracked off that. But that idea of kids making up rules to justify bad behavior and then believing them, like internalizing these rules as that they mattered, as if they were as important as a law or religion, or the girls in my book create let's call it the poacher's code, because they are stealing blueberries, but they call it poaching blueberries. So they make the poacher's code, and they become these rules that the girls really believe in, this false code of ethics. In fact, they at one point swear a blood oath, when you cut your thumbs and press your thumbs together, to swear a blood oath on this code. And they rely on this code in part to shield themselves from having to report this crime. So they made up an entire code of ethics, and then they use it to shield themselves. And now my children and I never covered up any crimes, just to be clear. But this idea of of that false code of ethics just really got in my head. And the funny little side story I will tell you is I did an interview with my local paper after the book came out. And I did a long interview. We talked about all sorts of topics. And I told them this story. The headline in the newspaper the next day was, "Dubious Parenting Leads to Novel." That was the headline. I was branded a bad mom in the newspaper. And it was funny because a lot of people came to my defense. I'm like, "Do you want us to call the paper? Do you want us to go into the comments? Should we write a letter to the editor?" And I was like, "No, I am a suburban mom. I never get to be the scandalous one. Let it go, let it go." That was where it started. It all started from bad parenting.
Please tell me you laminated that somewhere and had it hanging.
I have it. Yes, I had not laminated, but maybe I should.
I mean, because that's an heirloom right there that you.
It is very funny. And it's funny because I love this story. There's nothing in the article that I didn't say, but I thought it's funny that was the one liner that they needed to cling to tell the story, but it's true. And the rest of the story grew out of that image of these children picking blueberries, making up these rules, how to cover it up. And so when they came back to their hometown as adults, wanted to think, well, what would be different in the story? And that's where the environmental themes came into it. I had to do some research about really what was different in the environment in New Hampshire and how it's changing. And I learned it really has changed a lot. And all the big themes, the immigration themes, the climate change themes, the climate denialist themes from the government all came out of little girls stealing blueberries.
And I think it's also, what I love is when we talked about it on the podcast, you talked about the Waiting for the Night song having a different title.
Yeah.
And having to do with something climate related to New Hampshire. And if you could share that, because I'm still thinking about that. And I will say, I don't say anything about the bad parenting author that I interviewed on the podcast.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You might get more clicks or hits on it if you did. Like, I'm interviewing a bad parent tonight.
Everyone wants to watch. All the voyeurs come out. But I do tell that story, your story, about what the title was going to be and the reason why. I still relay that story because I find it incredible, if you wouldn't mind.
No, there's actually been 3. The first one was The Poacher's Code, was the original name. But then one I think you're referring to, the second title was called 4 Degrees.
Yes.
And I called it 4 Degrees because in the process of doing my research, I uncovered this piece of information that the average summer temperatures in New Hampshire have gone up 4 degrees in the past century. And I wondered, like, that seems like very disproportionate to me. And it is. It's disproportionate to most of the United States in this growing region in New Hampshire. So what's like, what does that mean to a community? So I did some research and I found out that our region now has a 22-day longer growing season than it used to because of the temperature increase. And what was remarkable to me is nobody thinks, front lines of the climate crisis is in New Hampshire, because things don't look different. There's not a disaster happening in front of your face in New Hampshire. It's been a slow burn over a century, a slow rise. This 22-day longer growing season happened over a long period of time, not over a month. And so a community adjusts slowly over time to something like this. And so I wanted to dive into what are all the different ways that this temperature change is affecting this town and the people in it. And it doesn't affect them all the same way. There are people losing farms because of the drought and because of crop loss. There are migrant farm workers who are displaced when the farms go under. There are firefighters who are having to adjust how they think about fire. So it's affecting the whole community, but from different angles. And it's a slow burn. It's not a disaster story of like rushing waters comes, wipes out the whole town. It's like a slow burn that you don't see coming.
Yeah, it's very subtle and it's so insidious. And until it's affecting you directly, you don't think it's a problem.
And the reason that he changed the title, that he didn't want it to stay with 4 degrees, is my publisher thought it sounded too much like a thriller, like a disaster story. It's like 4 degrees, and that's not the tone of the story. It's at its heart, it really is a story about a friendship, about Katie and her best friend Daniela. But so they wanted to, when they were talking to me about changing the title, they said, we want something. They gave me some very specific ideas. They said, we want something that invokes nature. Something that's, emotionally resonant and lyrical.
Good luck.
I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. So I went through, they suggested I go through the manuscript and just jot down all these nature descriptions in the book that jumped out to me as important. Just, smell, sounds, anything. So I made this list and then I went through, I made 35 new titles for my editor. I was like, one of these has got to work. Some of them were very bad on purpose to make the other ones look better. But when
No one will tell.
yeah, I will never tell you what they are either. So I called my editor and she wanted to hear the titles. And so I started with my favorite, which was Waiting for the Night Song. Remember, I had worked for a really long time on 35 titles. And as soon as I read Waiting for the Night Song, she said, we're done. And so she never heard the other 34. But it was the right title. It took me some work to get there, but it really speaks to the book that Night Song refers to a songbird in the New Hampshire forest that is a real bird. It's called the Bicknell's thrush, and it is endangered because of climate change. And so it plays a role in the story. And so it's a through line. It's a bird that Katie loved as a child. And when she returns home, there's not many of them left in the forest. So it's something that carries the past into the present. And it's a sense of longing and, loss and grief for things we're losing or potentially could lose. So once we came up with that title, I was like, that's it. That's
Yeah. I can't think of another title. It's like, when you paint your house, it's like you couldn't imagine it another color, or so I feel like the title is so perfect. And I'm really glad that was the one they went for. Also, when I think about that 4 degrees, it's just, it's unsettling and it's upsetting when you think about hearing that, because like I said, it doesn't affect you. It's like when you read Jesmond Ward Salvage the Bones, everything is fine until the minute that hurricane hits.
Yeah.
And it's just that it's incredible, the way you do it and the way Jesmond Ward does it. But at its heart, like you said, you've got this friendship between these two young women. They reunite. The two timelines are, just and then you do this nice little narrative thing where you're reading the one timeline and then you switch. And then you're like, oh no, and I want to know what's going to happen. And then you get involved in the second. So you keep that flow going. You keep the reader flipping those pages. And I don't know, viewers, if you could tell that I really like this book, but if you can't, yes, go ahead.
One thing I was trying to do by going back and forth in the 2 chapters is that Katie's memories of what happened as a child sort of evolved in her adult mind as the story's going on. As she's revisiting her hometown and her past, she's seeing that maybe the way she thought things happened, it didn't necessarily happen that way, and that not everybody has all the information. Like everybody has parts of the story.
Yes.
But that nobody has the whole story. I think that, I could have told this chronologically, but I think the give and take between the past and the present, it allows the reader to witness the childhood memories alongside her evolving memories as an adult. And I think that was, for me, I hope that worked, but that's what I was trying to do with the back and forth with the timelines.
And it's great because of those different perspectives. You were able to do this slow reveal. Yeah. And then the reader's like, oh, you're kidding, or oh my gosh. So it was a lot of exclaiming on my part. I will tell you that right away. So the book is out. It's everywhere. It's perfectly done because you blend so many of these different themes into the story. And I feel like when you were writing it, one thing just begat another. You've had the friendship story and this slow reveal of this truth that comes out eventually. And I'm not going to say anything more about it because I don't want to spoil it. And I'm this close to saying something I know. So I'm going to just try to be quiet. It is so well received. People are loving it. You're on all of these talk shows, Zooms, and these discussions with people talking about the book, which is probably a significant difference in the way you thought it was going to be. But during COVID, everyone had to pivot to Zoom.
Yeah.
But I also feel like so I follow you on all social media, and before we wrap up, I'll have people figure out where they can find you, because everything that you do on social media is amazing. And I'm asking a limited amount of questions, but I love when you sit with someone like Nancy Johnston or some other interviewer, and each time I watch you, there's another thing that's unveiled. The onion, just the layers just come out. So it's, for me, it's just this, it's this learning journey about the book, and I'm a big fan of that. How has it been doing all the Zooms? I mean, I guess you don't have to leave your house is one
Yeah.
thing. You can keep an eye on the farm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and obviously 13 years ago when I started writing this book, I had no, I didn't envision launching it from my, I'm in my attic right now and I'm in the attic. But that's not how I envisioned it, but there's been a lot of silver linings to this journey, and that, I'm here with you today. Like, would
Oh,
I have been able to come down and sit with you? Maybe we wouldn't have connected. And, there was a day that I did an event in, Scottsdale, Arizona, and a virtual event, and then immediately jumped over and did an event in Florida. And I was like, that would not have happened, in the same day. And so there's audiences I've been able to connect with and find in different parts of the country that, even if I did have a book tour planned. Not all authors get book tours. And when I found out I was going to have one, I'm like, yes, I won the lottery. I get a book tour. And then they canceled it. So it's sort of worse than if I hadn't had one in the first place. But I was in mourning for that. I was very sad and disappointed, but as soon as these events started happening and librarians started showing up for events, and bookstores and booksellers were hosting us, and it's a lot of work for you guys to do these things. But what you're doing is giving us air, you're giving us space to talk about our stories and our journeys, because I think that especially debut authors like myself would have gotten lost in the pandemic, because if you were wanting to buy books and it's a pandemic and there's books coming out and you see that there's a Stephen King book out, or a Kristen Hanna book coming out, and them, that's a safe bet. I'm going to buy that book. Who's Julie Carrick Dalton? I've never heard of her. I'm not, but
she's fabulous.
But you have given me a place to share my story, and booksellers all over the country have been doing that for authors during the pandemic. And I will forever be grateful for that, because it made my launch happen. It made it real, and it made it special. And I now have friends all over the country that when all these restrictions lift, I want to go on a tour and meet all these librarians and meet. I don't even need to meet the readers anymore. I want to go meet these librarians, and I'm going to hug you. I'm going to find you.
Oh, that would be amazing. Oh my gosh. And while we're feeling all this love, and I thank you for your kind words, and all I try to do is boost books and authors, and especially this book, which is really I just connected with it. But I've seen a lot of Zooms, and I've interviewed a lot of authors, and not everybody has in the background a saw on their on their credenza. So could you please give us what's with the saw? I think it's great.
So I think that there's a saying that if there's a saw on your shelf, it has to go off, right? Like a gun.
Yes.
So the saw, that is a real saw. It is a old rusty saw that belonged to my grandfather, and he was a lumberjack. He owned a sawmill, and he cut trees down for a living and then turned them into lumber. But he was a conservationist. He didn't just go clear cutting. He cared. And this is a fun story. I don't think I've ever told this story before, but my grandfather was such a softie that when he would cut trees down, there would often be a squirrel's nest in them, and a squirrel will not come back to the nest. Like, the mother squirrel will not come back if it's been disrupted. And he knew that. So he used to come home from work with pockets full of baby squirrels. Literally. And we nursed squirrel. I am the only person I know who had pet squirrels growing up. And we, with little eyedroppers, would feed these squirrels. And it was just like, I'm telling you that story because it's about my grandfather's love of nature and the forest and treating nature with respect. I think that trickles down. And now I own a forest. And, I have to think about forest management and, trees and selective pruning and things like that I never thought about. It makes me think of my grandfather, and I love having his saw. Another little thing about that saw, speaking of, having the weapons go off, that saw makes an appearance in my next book. So, I have another book coming out called The Last Beekeeper. There will be a saw, and it will play a very important role in the book.
Oh my gosh. So The Last Beekeeper. And so now I do want to also ask about the hurricane lamp back there. Is that also part of
That was my
grandpa's
yeah,
stash. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh
that
my gosh.
there is. I actually have three more of those that when he passed away, his sawmill, ironically, I mean his lumber mill was destroyed during a hurricane in
Oh,
is the 70s or 80s. I'm losing track of time. It was when I was pretty young. It was destroyed in a hurricane. I think maybe it was Hurricane Andrew. It was in Maryland, but not much survived. And some things that we were able to keep from he didn't rebuild because he was older, and he took the money and retired, and he did something different after that. But I have the saw. I have an old typewriter that he used in the office, like a clickety
oh my
clack, and
gosh.
it's amazing. It's a Remington. It weighs like 10,000 pounds. And so I have these little things from my grandfather's business and that I kept, but never knowing I was going to write a book about forestry one day. And so I like to keep those little memories behind me and be able to see them when I'm writing.
Oh my gosh. And he's looking down, smiling at all of this. I mean, it's really something that this is how this progression happened for you,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's really, especially the little baby squirrels. I mean,
The squirrels are going to be in the next book too. Yeah, there's going to be some baby squirrels. Yeah, I can't keep that stuff out of they're just like such great stories. They're so meaningful to me. I can't not write about them.
when you finished Waiting for the Night Song, the process of Waiting for the Night Song, and then you've got The Last Beekeeper. When does The Last Beekeeper start formulating for you? Had you already put Waiting for the Night Song to bed? Were some of the characters from the next book showing up in your mind as you were wrapping up the other book? How did that work for you?
Well, so when I finished Waiting for the Night Song, you get a literary agent, which is a really hard hurdle to get a literary agent. So I got the agent and I thought, okay, I'm going to make it. This is going to happen for me. And then we went out to sell it and it took a while. It didn't sell immediately. And I got really angsty. I was like super like stressed about it. So to distract myself, I was like, well, maybe I'll start a new project. So Waiting for the Night Song took me 13 years to write. The first draft of The Last Beekeeper took me a couple months
Oh,
because and it's not a reflection of me being dedicated or a good writer. It was all about my stress being channeled into that book, and it's changed a lot. That was a messy first draft, and I'm still working on it. But yeah, it was a very different writing process to get the first draft of that second book down compared to the first one. But the story came to me because I also keep bees. I don't have any live bees right now. I've lost a lot to colony collapse disorder, which is what
no.
inspired the second book. And it's about environmental elements impacting the demise of our pollinators. And it's a story that centers on the relationship between a man and his daughter. It's the daughter is the main character, and it's about her relationship with her father, and that which deteriorates as the bees are dying. And it's similar to the Night Song in that it has a central relationship. In Waiting for the Night Song, it's about Katie and her best friend Daniela's relationship, and in The Last Beekeeper, it's about a father-daughter relationship. But there's a lot of nature. It's very nature rich. In Waiting for the Night Song, there's a lot of like trees and rocks and lake water and dirt and all those things. And I think The Beekeeper, you'll feel that a similar type of writing, but you're going to be smelling honey and bees and the sounds and the vibrations of bees more than like you did the forest in this book.
Yeah, and it's true. In Waiting for the Night Song, I hear when Katie is walking through the wet leaves and she's sort of going through the mud that's underneath the leaves. Like it's really very visceral. And and then of course when she finds the beetles, I'm not a fan of that, but I understand that people have that role, and I'm happy that they are because it's listen, I know my limitations. I can't believe that about The Last Beekeeper. That is amazing. So it's coming out. Well, I guess you're still working on it, so we
It's
don't
come.
have like.
I do know when it's coming. I don't know the
Oh,
date, but it's going to come out in early 2023.
oh my goodness.
Probably January, February, March. We don't have a date, but it'll be early 2023.
Okay, so in the meantime, there's all these Zooms and all these other things that
Yeah, yeah.
people. Where can before we get into some of these other, do want to talk a little bit about the climate fiction before I let you go. Where can listeners, viewers, where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter. You can find me at Julie Cardalt. So it's like Carrick Dalton. So JuliecArdalt on Twitter, and I'm on Instagram at Julie C Dalton. You can find me on Facebook under Julie Carrick Dalton. I'm on Twitter more than any other platform. I know Instagram is a little trendier, but I tend to show up on Twitter a little bit more than I do Instagram. But I would love to hear from people and connect with people. I love every letter that anybody's ever sent me. I love knowing that people are reading the book. And I had someone send me an email. This may be a good segue into talking about climate fiction, but I had a letter a review recently, and someone, you can always tell in a review in the first couple sentences if it's going to be a good one or a bad one. And I started reading it, and it was on a blog, and it started out, I don't like stories about climate change. I'm not interested in climate change. I'm not interested in politics, and I don't watch the news. And I'm like, well, okay, this is not going to go well. This is going to be a pretty tough review. But it went on and said, but I love the characters. I love the story, and I cared what happened to the characters. And by the end of the book, I started caring about climate change, and now I think about it differently. And then she gave me a 4 out of 5 stars, but it was still my favorite review I've ever had, because I felt like it touched someone, like it changed someone. And, even if it's just a little turn apart to be thinking about climate change, for me, that was really meaningful. And it's the power that I think fiction has, that it's a vehicle that you can share ideas with people without being, in your face and wagging a finger. It's not a documentary. It's not a science book. It's
Right.
a story about people and relationships and a town. And if you care about them, maybe you will start to care about the things that are happening to them. And maybe that will stick with you. And that's what I think climate fiction is. And what
And
it
in
can
this
do.
book, you don't lecture. There's no lecturing going on. It's a story wrapped around these events that are happening at the same time. One of the quotes that we talked about in our episode 52 on the podcast was a quote, something you said, which I actually keep it on my desk at work. You said the quote is, reading a novel is an act of empathy because you are choosing to give over your world to someone else's worldview.
Yeah.
And
I think it's so
I
true.
thought, who is Julie Carrick Dalton? What is going on? Like just that sentence, it is 100%. I put it on a t-shirt, put it on a bumper sticker, so it's just exactly right. And it is exactly right for this book. And it is exactly right. Climate fiction, I think I don't want people to be scared of it and think,
Yeah.
like you said, that it's just going to be, you have to, it's not that at all. It's especially in this book. If you read the Overstory by Richard Powers,
Yeah.
if you read Salvage the Boat, I mean, what Richard Powers does in the Overstory is just
Magic.
I don't know. I don't even know what I would say to him in person.
Yeah.
Probably nothing.
I'd be so
What?
intimidated. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those books that I, as a writer, I read and I want to quit writing. I'm like, I could never do that. I need to
No,
just
you
walk
can't.
away
You
now.
have to. But you do that in this book. And I'm going to just hold it up again because I love looking at the cover in my own hands. But you do that in this book because you bring in, similar to what he does, you bring in these relationships and what's going on and what Katie's discovering. And all right, I'm gonna stop. But we did talk a little bit about climate fiction. I see also on your desk, credenza, back there, you've got 2 books, and luckily I have my glasses on. So would you share a little bit about those 2 books with the viewers?
Yeah, so Gun Island by Amitav Ghosh is one of my favorite books I've read in the past year or so. Maybe, I think it came out in 2019, I think. But it is a climate fiction story. It's a contemporary story that starts out in India, in this area called the Sundarbar, that's being threatened by rising water. It's a very real phenomenon, and people who've been living there, communities for generations, are being driven out by the rising water and mud. And it starts there, and there's you end up in Venice at some point. You're on the west coast of the United States, and he's observing different elements of climate change. But it's a story. It's really like almost an adventure story that he's tracking down this ancient Bengali myth that seems to be reasserting itself in the present. It's not a magical realism. It's not like anything magic's happening, but he's seeing all these echoes of this legend showing up, and you're witnessing, animals acting ways they shouldn't, or being in places that they aren't shouldn't be because of changing temperatures. It's just a really wonderful story. And then the other one is a children's Bible, which I have not read. And that's my, top of my list, which is also a climate story that I'm really excited to read. And I know a lot of people have, been excited about it, but there's so many good books. And I'm really glad that you brought up this idea of it's not scary, because these are just big stories. And that's what it always is about. It's always about the character and the story, because you could have a great message or a great theme you want to share with people, but if you can't wrap it up in a story that makes people want to turn the page or makes people care, they're not going to finish it. So but you're not going to get any messages across. But the climate fiction, there's a huge growth in the number of books that are taking on climate crisis in it in subtle ways, some of them in overt ways. There's lots of dystopian apocalyptic stories. But there's lots of quiet ones. There's some romance novels that are, writing.
Yes, there's what was that one that came up? Yes, that's it. What a great book.
Yeah. And it's a rom-com, enemies to lovers on a cruise ship to the Galapagos. And it takes on, conversations about, ethical use of this planet, or, our the way we choose to live and the ramifications. So in young adult fiction, there's I don't know if you've read Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse.
Oh my gosh, that book.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
A Native American writer, and it's this kind of futuristic superhero story with all indigenous the myths that rise up from the land and become real. And this climate story, and it's brilliant. And then and Marrow Thieves, have you read that one?
Oh no, that one I haven't.
Sherry, I'm going to say her last name wrong and I'm going to feel bad. Sherry Dimaline, I think is her name. Okay. But the Marrow Thieves is also a young adult kind of futuristic dystopic story by another Native American author. It's just these stories are so compelling. And I love that, YA literature, like the Gilded Ones that just came out by Namina Four. And there's so many great stories. And what I also love is there's a lot of voices, it's not a homogenous bunch of people writing, not just a bunch of white Americans writing these stories. I haven't read it yet, but I just got my hands on it. Is it called How Beautiful We Were? I'm blanking.
Oh, yeah. Mbolo, yes.
Yeah. I'm now embarrassed. I can't remember the name, but I am dying. I have the book and I've got it in my hands and I haven't started reading it yet, but that is probably going to be the next book I read, about a woman in an African village that takes on an oil company.
It will floor you. I should have you back just so we could talk about that.
I know, we could have like sci-fi conversation hour. But there's so many books they're coming from all different angles. There are
look, for example, last month I interviewed Sarah Langan for Good Neighbors, and what is the big part of that story? There is a giant sinkhole that opens up in Garden City on Long Island. And the reason for the sinkhole, so she does this climate thing also, that the increase in sinkholes, and they're just going to start happening, and how it affects, but although it affects the town, the people around it are responding in a certain way to this and figuring how they're going to live with it, and should they move, should they not move. But this is part of what's happening in the world. You open up the newspaper sometimes and it's just like, another sinkhole in Florida. Oh, there's another sinkhole in California. And that terrifies me. You walk out your front door, you go into and you just don't know. And that's part of what's happening in these small ways. And so like you're saying, it's not this finger wagging, but it's sort of brought in the way you do it in Waiting for the Night Song. It's brought in the same way.
Do you know the author Omar Al-Akkad, who wrote American War?
What a book.
Oh, that book, that is, it's a near future story of the United States entering into a second Civil War, and the South secedes again, but it's based on clinging to fossil fuel use as part of the culture, and echoes of how the South seceded because of slavery. It's a really great story, but what I've heard Omar speak at several events and articles, and I've heard him say that pretty soon all fiction will be climate fiction, because we're not going to be able to write about life on planet Earth and not acknowledge what's going on around us. And in some ways, I mean, even historical fiction, I think as we are writing about I don't write historical fiction, but as authors write about history, and living in a moment where the world is changing, I can't help but think that we're going to be looking back at history differently, and seeing nature differently, or seeing choices that we made, during the Industrial Revolution that, rippled into the future and that we're dealing with now. Like how will historical fiction in the future be written? That's kind of complicated there, but in the future, when people look back at history, I think there's going to be a climate lens to a lot of it, because it's so much a part of our life. And the other thing I think climate fiction does is this, we have this sense in the United States, not everybody, so I don't want to lump everybody in the same basket, but we think of climate change as something that's coming. It's this event we're preparing for, because in a lot of places, which is why I wanted this book in New Hampshire, because nobody thinks of New Hampshire as climate change central. But for so many places in the world, so many parts of our country, it's already here. The apocalypse has arrived, and it almost always, I don't say always, but in most cases, it's hit first and worst. It hits Black and brown communities, indigenous communities, communities without the resources to engage in mitigation efforts. Or maybe it's because those pieces of land were what was made, people were relegated to land that was, less safe.
Right.
They maybe don't have the resources to move. And so we think of it as a future disaster in a lot of ways, which is an incredibly privileged position, because if I can say right now, today, I am not affected by climate change. I got up, my family is safe, I have food, I have water, I have shelter, the trees aren't dying in my yard. That is a lot of privilege right there. And so in Waiting for the Night Song, I did a lot of work to try to connect my little town in New Hampshire to other parts of the world, to Central America, to the Caribbean. There's lines in my story that draw back to those things. And we talked about the timeline of the children and the adults in my book, and how even as little kids, those rules, the poacher's code, there's a lot of environmental ethics in those rules. Don't pick all the berries. Don't kill any bugs. Don't take all, don't pick if there's a bird's nest. They're very rudimentary conservation laws. And the girls even discuss how every action they take can have ramifications that they won't understand. Like, don't kill a spider, because you don't know if that spider was going to have 1,000 babies, they were going to have 1,000 babies, they were going to bite someone, it was going to change history. So don't kill that spider. And that is a kind of a parable in the middle of my book about how every little thing we do is going to affect somebody somewhere, and we might not know what it is. Like something that I'm doing right now could wash up on the shores in another country to other people, and I will never know it. But all the actions have a consequence somewhere. And I think that's one of the big themes in my book.
Yeah, and it is. And then when I look at this book, and then I think of Overstory, the way the chestnut trees, like that whole first part of the book with the chestnut trees, and we think, we just take it for granted, and it's just this insidious thing that we just don't see. I'm also thinking about when you talked about the future historical fiction will deal with climate change. I went with you there. That was pretty good.
Yeah, it was a little mind twisty.
It was. I was thinking of Migrations by Charlotte McConaughey.
Oh my gosh. I have that one right here. I got to hold it up.
Yeah, please hold that up.
Oh my gosh. I love this book so much. She has a new book coming out,
Yes.
Once There Were Wolves, I think this summer. Actually, if you can give me a minute, I'm going to show you.
Yes, please.
These two books. I don't know if you've read The Wall by John Lanchester.
I haven't read that one.
Okay, so these two books have some things in common and some huge differences, and I love talking about them together because they both take place in the near future. There's a lot of huge climate impact on the earth and migrations. The first line of the book is something to the effect of, all the animals are gone, soon we will be alone. I probably got that off a little bit, but it's almost all animals are extinct. In The Wall, it's a future where we've literally built a wall along the ocean so the boats can't get into the United States because the climate disaster has changed the world so much, and the protectionism. So there's this huge change. But in migrations, it's a disaster. It's horrible that all these animals are extinct. And I left that book with so much hope in my heart. And that she somehow takes this world and allowed me to see hope by falling in love with the nature that still existed there. Mm-hmm. And it made me feel like, there's some joy. It's a sad book. It's a love story. It's a story of grief, but it's beautifully written. But she took me to a very bleak world and made me feel hopeful. I'm like, wow, no, that is good writing. Yes. Now, The Wall is an indictment It's this future world, all these things are happening, but there's this moment in the book where the narrator kind of looks into the lens at the reader and talks about how he can't communicate with his parents' generation because they bear so much shame because the world broke on their watch and they chose not to do it. And I read that and I was like, oh, you're talking to me. You are my children or my grandchildren's generation looking back and pointing your finger at me. Why didn't you do anything for us? And it's like really jarring and really effective. And so these two worlds that could be happening at the same time in migrations and the wall. Like, I don't know, I don't think there's years dated on them, but they could theoretically be happening. And one like grabbed me by the heart and was just like, don't let this happen because I am responsible if I don't try to change it. And the other one showed me, yes, this is bad, but there's always way to hope. So it's like there's these two books. I love talking about them together because they do very different things, but they're both wonderful books.
And I have the galley upstairs for her new book. I think it's The Wolves.
You do? I'm so jealous. Yeah. Once there were wolves. Yeah. I'm super jealous.
It came like last week and I thought, oh my gosh, and I'm going to be interviewing Julie, so we'll be able to talk about it. But I have not opened it yet.
Well, I don't know anything about it yet. I'm dying to get my hands on it, though.
Yeah. So it's very exciting. I have kept you so long, but I can, I just want to see if there's any, oh, you know what? I'm trying to see some of the live comments and it's very hard for me to see them. I don't know why I can't see them at all, but so bear with me.
Will they be visible on Facebook that if we can't take them live, that I could go back if there's any questions, I could pop in and answer people's questions on Facebook?
Try to see if I can see some of them because I can't. I know Michelle.
While you're doing that, can I tell you about another book I'm kind of in love with?
Yes, please. Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. So this book is called Depart. Depart is a novella. It's like really thin. You can read it really quickly. And it's really original. And it's the premise. It's by, I think it's a debut work by Sim Kern. And it takes place in Houston during this flood event that it's way worse than Katrina, and this flood that happens in Houston in this book. And it's about this the people who find refuge in a sports arena, kind of like what happened in Katrina. But way more people died, not to minimize Katrina at all, but in this catastrophe, it's on a scale that we've not seen. And this found community of people, of refugees, and it's specifically about a community mostly of trans, non-binary, and queer refugees that are escaping the flood, that find each other and build community and together during this crisis. And it's a wonderful book, and it's a new voice that I'm really hoping that Sim Kern is going to be putting some more work out soon. But it's a vulnerable story, and it's memorable, and there's a ghost in it. So like, there's so much to love about this story.
Can you hold it up just one more time?
Yeah.
Just so that everybody. Okay, great.
Depart, depart.
Okay, so I will read some of the comments. Marianne Malagon says, I enjoyed this interview. Thank you both. And Sandy Waldman, hi, Sandy. I hope you're still there. She said, thank you both. And Beth Brenner says, great stories that Julie shared tonight. That's amazing. Look at your fan club. This is so great. Well, I can't thank you enough, Julie, for coming back, for spending time at Merrick Library again, for spending time with me. There's probably little heart emojis all around my head. When we
always so much fun to talk with you.
This is amazing. So I will, of course, see you on Instagram, and I will tell everybody to read the book. Any final things you want to say to, anybody out there before
read climate fiction, find books that are tackling climate change, and then go talk to somebody about it. That's what I would hope people would do.
Yeah, and maybe
Happy Earth Day tomorrow.
Yay, Happy Earth Day, right? Turn off the lights. Don't just.
I know. I'm gonna turn my ring light off as soon as we get off.
put on the.
Yeah, I'll light the kerosene lamp. I'll go cut down some trees and
Oh my God, take care of the farm. I wanted to ask more about the farm, but I didn't get to it because I was having too much fun sharing climate books with you. Remember, folks, that Top Shelf Merrick Library podcast is on Spotify now, and episode 52 features this lovely, lovely author, super smart, fabulous Julie Carrick Dalton, and we talked about Waiting for the Night Song and so much more that we didn't cover here. So it's really worth a listen. I can't say enough about that particular interview because I listened to it 2 or 3 times already. So thank you so much, Julie. I am going to sign off Facebook, which is never an easy thing for me to figure out how to do. So let's see if I can make it happen. Merrick patrons, thank you for joining us. Guests near and far, thanks again. I hope everybody stays safe and stays healthy. If you're interested, the Merrick Library book discussion is next. It's going to be on May 4th, which I believe is a Tuesday. May the 4th be with us all. And we are hosting at that book discussion Sarah Penner for her book, The Lost Apothecary.
Oh, she's one of my writing partners.
Yeah, I know she is. So it was just like all of these things collided. So if you did want to join the book discussion, folks, you can just go to our Facebook page. You can sign up there. You can go to our webpage and sign up there as well. And it's going to be great. And I'm really looking forward to that. And I can't thank my guest, Julie Carrick Dalton, enough for being here tonight. Julie, mwah, you're the best.
Thank you.
Awesome.
It was tons of fun. I'll talk to you
All
soon.
right. Good night, everybody.